Happy Death Day to you. Happy Death Day to you. Happy Death Day to... Oh, fuck, you're dead.
Wake up. Time to die.
Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gloor, joined by...
Anthony Ray Bench.
Yeah,
How's
and
it going, everybody?
we have a bunch of movies to talk about, and we have a very special segment direct from LA Podfest, the Los Angeles Podfest, where we did our live show, which we'll be releasing shortly. But we have several movies to talk about before we get to that, and even before we even first, we should just say we're recording this in a car.
Yeah, again.
Well, no, okay, at least this time it's not a moving car.
Yeah, thank God.
So it's the way that this podcast is recorded is not at the most convenient times. And I think that I actually like it this way because I feel that it adds some reality to what we're doing. We're not like in a comfy studio with sodas and
we are very busy
drinks.
People. We cannot live the studio life. We cannot be one of those people that just schedules stuff and goes along with it. We have stuff to do.
Well, this is a gritty. This is a reality. Is it even a podcast? Because having come from LA Podfest, the LA Podcast Festival. Wait, it's the Los Angeles Podcast Festival, which is also known as LA Podfest. But having been there, I didn't even realize there was this whole disdain for the word podcast. A lot of people like to call it a soundcast, whereas I think that we should call this audio that you're listening to, it's a documentary without visuals. This is what it is. It's like a documentary, but you don't get to see anything.
Yeah, it's like the whole Band-Aid versus adhesive strip thing. Like, just call it whatever the fuck you want, and I'm used to calling it a podcast, so it's a fucking podcast.
Okay, well, all right. It's a documentary for the blind. I don't know what. Or you could just close your eyes and listen.
The news could be considered a documentary for the blind. To a blind person.
I think that's very deep what you just said.
Yeah.
But you know what we should talk about?
What?
We should talk about our sponsor.
Yeah.
The sponsor of the Film Threat Podcast, Videoblocks.
Such an awesome sponsor.
Okay, Videoblocks.com is our sponsor. It is and if you go to videoblocks.com/filmthreat, you sign up for $149 for 1 year. You have unlimited access to
some of the coolest stuff ever.
Tons of stock footage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a ton of stock footage. Stock audio. Did you realize there's audio on there?
I did. Yeah.
And in addition,
that helps my job out a ton.
Now, in addition to all the access that you get to all this additional content, you can actually, as a content creator, create stock footage, upload it there, and sell it to other people.
Make a bit of scratch on the side.
And I did for my work. I bought a subscription. I bought a 6-month subscription. I used my own offer code to sign up to videoblocks.com.
And what's that offer code, Chris?
Videoblocks.com/filmthreat. We actually used it in some videos for my work at GEMR.com. But I'm not doing a commercial for them. This is a commercial for videoblocks.com/filmthreat, and we thank them for sponsoring the show.
Yes, thank you so much.
We'll talk more about Videoblocks on a future episode, on our special documentary episode of the upcoming episode of the Film Threat Podcast. But we have a couple films to talk about.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like we should talk about the movie we just saw until we pivot to a movie perhaps we'll talk about for longer. We just saw Happy Death Day.
Yeah.
Which is a Blumhouse horror film that had one of the best trailers. It's kind of like, okay, so the premise is a girl in college. Her name is Tree. Her name is Teresa.
Weird fucking name.
Her name is Teresa, but they call her Tree.
Okay, I didn't catch that.
And Teresa is her full name.
I just thought her name was Tree. I was like, what? No,
everyone calls her
name.
Everyone calls her Tree, but I'm like, that's a really specific. You need to have known someone a little longer to have your name go from Teresa to Tree.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something I don't know. Maybe it's an inside thing with the people who made the movie. In any case, great trailer for this movie, Happy Death Day. And what I love about this film is it's about 90 minutes. So what? I can have a favorite running time.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's 90 minutes, which is great because I feel like good horror, good comedy, 90 minutes. I don't know when movies got too long, and we're going to talk about a really long movie soon, but movies have become too long. It's like, I miss the days when, a Star Wars movie was 2 hours and 1 minute, or a Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones movie was 2 hours. Now movies have to be 2.5 hours. I don't know why. And I can't think of any movie that was 2.5 hours that I've seen where I thought to myself, that needed to be 2.5 hours. They don't need to. But so first of all, out of the gate, I'm already on board because it's a 90-minute horror film that's very high concept. So, I mean, if you've seen the trailer for the movie, there aren't any spoilers in what I'm about to say, but it's effectively Groundhog's Day with, it's Groundhog's Day where a girl she wakes up from a one-night stand. She runs into some of her, fellow classmates and sorority sisters, and good and bad things happen, and they all kind of happen in the same order. And then at the end of the day, she gets murdered by someone in a mask, in the creepiest baby mask it's horrifying.
Okay, actually, that's where our opinions differ because
you like the baby mask?
No, I thought it was the stupidest mask in recent memory.
I'm not saying it wasn't stupid.
Nothing about that mask was creepy or unsettling or anything.
What college has a baby as its mascot?
Exactly.
I'm just sitting here thinking, like, why would you have a baby with 1 or 2 teeth in its front as, like, that's the mascot of your college?
It reminded me of that movie from, was it the late 90s or early 2000s? I don't remember, but it had David Boreanaz in it. Valentine's Day, where, like, the masked killer, like, wore, like, a Cupid, like plastic mask, and it looked really, really cheap and ugly. No, nothing was terrifying about this mask. It's not iconic in the least. As a matter of fact, when I saw the trailer and they showed the killer mask, I thought, this is going to be like a comedy, like mostly a comedy with kind of horror elements. And we talked about this earlier. It's very tonally inconsistent. Like, it doesn't know if it wants to be a comedy or if it wants to be
right. I mean, I wish it was more of a comedy. It really needed the comedy, but the lead actress, I don't know her. She is not someone I've ever. I'm sure that
her name's Jessica Roth.
Jessica Roth. I wasn't really. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
We differ on this too.
Okay, so wait a sec. So the movie, actually, what I do like about this film, it references Groundhog's Day in a movie that basically
directly, and I loved that.
Directly,
that was
it
funny.
directly they talk about Groundhog's Day in the movie, and then the movie is basically, conceptually speaking, it is Groundhog's Day. With at the end of the day, the girl gets murdered, and then her day begins again. Mm-hmm. So that's. So they actually call it out. The thing is this: the difference between Groundhog's Day. Groundhog's Day stars Bill Murray, and Bill Murray is likable. Even in like movies where he's unlikable, he's still likable. You can't not like Bill Murray. There's a lot of actors like that they're just, even if they're horrible, you still like them.
If they're playing horrible people, I would say like Woody Harrelson kind of fits in that category too.
Right. But I just, I don't know. She was just not, she didn't, and the whole thing is she starts out as, she's kind of a bitch.
Oh.
She's kind of a bitch.
Yeah.
She's kind of a bitch.
Basically, like the first time.
She's mean to everybody. She's mean.
Yeah. The first time she like experiences the day that she lives over and over and over again, I was thinking to myself, this is the most like unlikable character I've experienced in a long, long time, and I can't wait to see her die. And I gotta say, man, by the end of the movie, like especially that sequence where she had it all figured out and kind of does channel Bill Murray in a big way, dude, I fell for her. Like, I was just like, all right, I'm on board. I like this character. I see what they were going with. They were kind of doing the Groundhog Day where she was trying to redeem herself through living these instances over and over and over again, and kind of I thought the actress was charming, and I thought she pulled it off. You disagree, and you know what, Chris? You're fucking wrong.
Well, I think it was one of those scripts that someone read and thought, someone read this script and thought, oh my God, it's brilliant. I just think that it just wasn't, I feel like you needed someone more charismatic in that lead role, or a charismatic villain. The charismatic villain, that villain was just. Let's not get into spoilers, but I feel like the villain was not. I mean, like a Freddy Krueger is sort of, or a Michael Myers, like there's something about a good villain, a good foil, and it didn't work in this. So it didn't work for me.
That reveal that was so prominent in the Scream movies and all of the movies that were derivative of the Scream movies, like I Know What You Did Last Summer and everything, and it was just a big letdown. It was just like there were so many different avenues they could have gone with it, and it was just nothing special about who was behind everything, and I don't know, man, like that didn't work for me. But I wish it would have figured out what it wanted to be, whether it wanted to be a comedy or horror, because sometimes it felt like it wanted to be straight up horror, and sometimes it felt like it was trying too hard to be funny, and there was no balance. This movie had no concept of a balance, but at the end of the day, it was enjoyable. I think it's forgettable.
Well, unfortunately, I agree with you. I do think it was, I mean, I was looking forward to this movie as soon as the trailer debuted. Yeah. I was looking forward to this when we got a screening invite to go see it. I thought, oh my gosh, we have to go to this. I mean, like the trailer, like I want to see a good horror movie, and I don't want to say I was let down. Like it wasn't bad. It was just like, nah. And then the other thing was, I thought all of the violence, all of the deaths were weak. They weren't like
straight up PG-13 status.
Totally
no blood, no gore.
They could have aired during ABC Family Hour, because you never actually see her. I mean, you see a couple stabbings. There's like maybe blood and a knife, but that's it. It could have been so much more creative with the sort of gory deaths, and which I think would have been funny from the standpoint of she was such an unlikable character. To see her get killed over and over again would have been satisfying to the audience, because she would have deserved it. So I felt they should have gone more trauma style on the gore.
I agree. I do want to mention a much better horror movie that I saw that's actually on Netflix. I'm a big Child's Play fan. I love Chucky. Cult of Chucky is on Netflix now. I definitely recommend it if you're a fan of the series. The thing I love about the Child's Play movies is they are well aware of the absurd nature of a little doll going around and killing people. And this one is no different. It stars Fiona Dourif, which is Brad Dourif's daughter. Brad Dourif being the voice of Chucky, from the very first Child's Play movie. It's a fun movie. It's funny. The gore is just really, really well done. Some of the effects are kind of wonky looking, but there is no CG in the movie. They just used puppetry. So that's why it kind of looked weird and kind of wonky, but that was a fun movie.
Well, I love practical effects. Yeah. Horror, I think it's, know. All right, well, it's good to get a good recommendation, and I didn't know that was on Netflix, so that's good.
Definitely check it out if you're a fan of the series. If you think the series is dumb, it's not going to be for you, but I loved it. I've been a fan since I was a kid. I think that was the first horror series that I actually loved as a child. But yeah, I liked that a lot better than Happy Death Day, but Happy Death Day was okay.
But I'm glad Happy Death Day is sort of ushered in the season of Halloween in a way, because it's, it opens on Friday the 13th, 2017, in case you're listening to this in the future, because we have no idea when you listen to the podcast. But I'm a huge, I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. So as soon as I came back from New York Comic Con, the first thing I did was just hang up my Halloween decorations.
You decorated the bat.
I decorated the patio into that. So now before we switch gears and talk about the next film, I think it's important to mention that the Film Threat podcast will be live at Stan Lee's Los Angeles Comic-Con on Sunday, October 29th at 2 p.m. And we hope to see you there. If you are in Los Angeles and you're going to go to Stan Lee's Los Angeles Comic-Con, stop by and see the Film Threat podcast live. We don't have our guest lineup yet, but I can just tell you it will be an epic guest lineup. If it's half as good as our Los Angeles podcast festival lineup, it's going to be awesome. So
I cannot wait for this one. The LA Comic-Con.
But you're going to have to wait. So don't say you cannot wait. You just have no choice. That's not the way time works.
I'm being forced into waiting, okay?
It's not the way time works, Anthony.
All right. LA Comic-Con is hands down my favorite comic convention of the year. I mean, not all of us get the pleasure of going to Dragon Con.
What? Okay, that's probably my favorite personal.
Yeah,
favorite. But okay, one day you'll go. But
I love LA Comic Con. I'm really looking forward to this panel. It's going to be a blast. So please join us.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so now let's talk about the movie that we've been waiting to talk about for a while.
Yeah, this is an interesting one.
Blade Runner 2049.
Yep.
Okay. I don't think you can talk about Blade Runner 2049 without talking about the first Blade Runner. And by the first Blade Runner, I mean the 5 versions. And I think there's more out there, but
there's more.
I remember seeing Blade Runner in a theater when it first came out in 1982, and I remember thinking it was weird. It was not what I expected. It was beautiful. It stuck with me. It was one of those things where I thought about it deeply after. I can't say that about many films that I see in a year. So I am a fan. There's sort of a weird, there's a lot of people that don't like this movie. I didn't realize there were people that didn't like this movie. I know the movie tanked at the box office.
Yeah.
When it first came out, I remember seeing it in a theater where there were like 25 people spread in a theater that seats 300. And I remember thinking like, but Harrison Ford's in this movie. It's freaking Han Solo and Indiana Jones. Why aren't there more people here? And then the movie is, I mean, I like smart science fiction, and I know that the movie is flawed. It has it moves at a pace that is different, that is not what people have become accustomed to.
Yeah.
But I feel that that's for a reason. I mean,
I saw the original theatrical cut on VHS as a kid. I was probably like 5 or 6, and I didn't understand anything that was going on. Like that movie, I mean, you have to be a little bit older to watch that movie. And I remember reading about it in the magazines I used to read as a kid, and just kind of like getting a sense of its significance and the kind of different influences that it had on all these films that I ended up loving when I was older. I remember I saw that they had a director's cut VHS at Costco, and I bought that, and I watched that as a kid in my room when I had my own VCR, which was a big deal for me. And I grew to love that movie, the director's cut version of it. And I remember when it came out on DVD, I bought it the first day it came out on DVD. And that's one of my favorite films of all time. And when they announced that they were coming out with a sequel, I was like, God, this is going to be terrible.
Technically speaking, the best version is the final cut, which you can buy. I didn't realize you could digitally buy 2 versions. You could buy the director's cut or the final cut. So I think I might have to buy the digital version of both, but I have the box set that has the 5 versions. And over the course of a couple days, I was working on something, and I just sort of I just watched all the different versions back to back. So now here we are, Blade Runner 2049, and we have seen so many film franchises. I don't think you can consider Blade Runner a franchise for sure.
No.
It certainly is one of those like movies that if you were a fan of cinema, and especially in the realm of science fiction and fantasy, Blade Runner is one of those touchstones. It's a film that people like. It's a film that people will debate and discuss and it's unforgettable. Whereas a movie like Krull, kind of forgettable, or Happy Death Day, which we spoke about for the first 20 minutes of this soundcast. So there hasn't been a really good history of movies where it's like, it's been 20 years. Should we make a sequel?
No, and that was a big...
and so this was my trepidation over seeing this, was like, or that they were making it to begin with. Like,
and the first
what
movie,
are they? There weren't any unanswered questions.
No,
there were no unanswered questions. I do like the fact that the worlds of Alien, Prometheus, and Blade Runner connect.
And Firefly.
And Firefly.
Want to stretch it.
Right. They're all of the same world, right? They're of the same universe.
Connected through Wayland Yutani.
It's the Ridley Scott connected universe, which he was way ahead of Marvel on that one.
Don't give them ideas. They're going to do a shared universe movie like Ridley Scott's Avengers, and he'll do something like that.
Blade running with the aliens. But okay, so I was not looking forward to this, and Ryan Gosling is an actor who I actually enjoy. I like the fact that
I dig him.
Has a sense of humor. He is an attractive man who can also act. I would say he can act his way out of a paper bag. Not a phrase that is used often, but in any case, so I went to see the movie, and I actually saw it in New York. During New York Comic Con.
Did you do the double feature?
I did not do the double feature.
I did the double feature.
I was my buddy Matt Aravello from Loot Crate. He and I were like, it's Comic Con. What are we doing? We could go out drinking and partying, but you know what we should do? We should go see Blade Runner 2049.
Because it did get good buzz.
And the theater we went to you could buy chicken and waffles.
Nice.
Which I did not get that, but Matt got that. He said it was delicious. I did have some popcorn and Raisinets.
Together?
Of course. Is there any other way to eat popcorn and Raisinets?
I know people that mix it. It's weird.
Well, let's get to the movie. So it was before we talk about the film itself, the setting was, I've never experienced a more polite audience in New York. It seems like every time I go to New York, although there was one guy in the back that was like having a conversation with himself a couple times, but it was so far distant I could barely hear it because the movie was so loud. Was the screening of yours loud? And I mean this in a positive way. Like,
yes, very loud.
It was so loud, it like vibrated, like it was great. So
I didn't tell you about this.
What?
So we were sitting in like luxury seats, and Megan pokes me towards the end of the first film, and she like points over, and the guy like sitting next to Megan was with his girlfriend or whatever, wife, I don't know. And the dude was like basically like getting like a dry like hand job through his pants. We had to call the theater attendant. It was super gross and creepy. I have the worst fucking luck in movie theaters.
What is this? First of all, it's so true that you have the worst luck, and I have no idea what that has to do with I don't know.
You were talking about your movie experience. I wanted to share mine.
Yes. I think that yours was worse. I think on the scale of worse movie experiences, you are the winner.
Yeah.
On that.
Just saw some dude's erect penis like bulging out of his pants. It was gross. Fucking learn to just go to a movie and be a normal human being.
Learn to not get hand
respectful
jobs in a theater.
Unless the theater's empty. I mean, scene right next to
Is that when it's okay? When the theater's empty? I would say...
I don't know. If you're a teenager and dumb and you don't have anywhere else to go,
I would say
it's not okay.
In public, probably not the best idea.
No.
In public...
People are disgusting.
Keep it in your pants. Wait a sec. He did keep it in his pants.
Yeah.
Okay, why are we talking about this? Let's get to the movie.
Exactly.
So... okay, do we have to go through the story? Like Ryan Gosling, and
just go see the movie.
This is in
good.
the first few.
It's really good.
This is in the first 5-10 minutes of the movie. He is a replicant. Like Ryan Gosling plays a character named Kay, who is a replicant.
I wouldn't have fucking spoiled that, Chris.
Real? What?
Yeah,
it's in the first few minutes.
Come on, man.
What? It's been out. It's been out. This is a week later.
I know it's been out, but judging from the box office, no one has fucking seen it.
All right. Well, I don't care. We're talking spoilers.
We could have pushed people into that theater,
Spoilers.
Man. We could have done our duty
No, but it's good that they just start the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
He's a replicant. So, but
Yeah.
he's a replicant who hunts other replicants.
Any lesser filmmaker and scriptwriter would have dragged that out and made it a mystery.
No,
and
they
thank God they were just like right off the bat. Okay, this character
get it out of the way
is what it is.
right at the beginning. And I'll say
Yeah.
that there is then a mystery where he is trying to unravel a mystery about a corpse that was found during a routine replicant disposal, and that drives a search that ends up, I will say the first 2/3 of the movie I found thrilling, fascinating. I love the tone of it. It's about what it is to be human. It's about love and acceptance. It's about, because
it's about feeling like you have a destiny.
it's like Kay has a character. Kay has a girlfriend. This character who's
Joy, yeah.
Joy, who's she's a hologram basically.
An artificial intelligence, kind of like the movie Her.
Right, it's
bit.
her, but like, turned into a hologram that can walk around and talk and wear different outfits and dress up for him and do stuff. And
It's like what like Echo, like Amazon Echo is going to be like in like probably like 15 years.
Yeah, no, the Alexa is definitely going to be having sex with people. Well, they said, I guess there was a study
Can't
also.
wait. What?
There was a study, you can Google this. There was a study where basically people were saying sex in the future with robots is just going to be a thing that people do, just like masturbation or dry hand jobs in movie theaters before a film or between two movies. Sandwiched between two movies is a dry hand job in the theater where you saw Blade Runner 2049. Back to the film. So what happens? The thing is this: I don't know that I want to spoil it because it is so good. If you have not seen the,
Yeah, I think you've spoiled enough, to be honest.
Right. Okay, but for the first 2/3 of the movie is this plot that I've just found fascinating, and then it switches dramatically to almost a completely different storyline, and I was not as engaged. And I will say that certain things were dragged out. And again, as we were talking about earlier, the movie's like 2 hours and 44 minutes. It did not need to be. I really felt it.
Yeah,
you could have cut 30 minutes out. You wouldn't have lost a scene. Well, you would have lost a couple scenes, but you didn't need for the movie to be this long. Really, it bothers me that filmmakers think in order to be high-minded or this is a work that's beyond just a commercial film, it's a really, really, really long movie.
I thought the stuff that could have been cut out, honestly, a big portion of it was the stuff between Kay and Joy. I thought a lot of that.
No, that stuff was good. There were just some other things towards the end I thought that were dragged out that didn't need to be.
I don't agree with you on that. I think the ending, the last portion of the film was great. Like I don't understand where the tonal shift you're referring to. Like I just don't understand where you're coming from this time, Chris.
What?
I don't. I thought.
Well, in order to get into it, we'd have to talk spoilers. Maybe we want to. I think we want to save that for a future.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Like, maybe we can do an entire episode of movies we don't agree on.
But people are divided. What I find interesting about this about Blade Runner 2049 is how divided people are. The critics seem to love it, and audiences seem to be mixed to negative.
Everybody I've personally talked to has loved it. Like even maybe more than I've loved it. I liked it, and this is one of the rare movies that the more I think about it, the more I find myself liking it. Usually,
me too. Yeah,
I'm usually the person that I love it, and then the more I think about it, the more I'm like, maybe I didn't love it, maybe I just liked it. But this one, I walked out liking it, and just this movie, much like the original Blade Runner for me, it sticks with you. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop thinking about, the concepts behind, especially the character Wallace, the character played by Jared Leto. his whole, wanting to be God, and he speaks, and all of these theological, basically his first line dialogue is, you bring me good news, or something about, being God, and like his little assistant is an angel. By the way, the character Love, his android henchman, I loved her. I thought she was like...
No, she was great.
She was creepy and crazy in all the right ways. But I loved the character Wallace. I thought that he was in the movie the perfect amount of time. It's one of those movies that makes you think, and I can't wait to see it again. But yeah.
Well, I also think that this is one of those movies that it really begs to be seen multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
In order to really... Because when I walked out, initially, when I first saw it, I was kind of just... I wasn't sure where I stood. And,
that's how I was.
The more I thought about it, the more I liked it. But I feel like I need to see it again to recognize whether the tonal shift after the first 2/3 actually is a positive or a negative. But when I say positive or negative, who cares?
Yeah.
It's really like, I mean, when I think of like when I've seen certain movies, I feel like my opinion about them has changed as I have changed.
Oh, absolutely.
So
yeah.
So there you go. Now, because this is a special sort of because this is a special episode of the Film Threat Podcast, we have some.
All of our episodes are
well,
special.
we have a bonus. Think of this as a bonus feature. Think of this as a bonus feature. Keep listening. There's going to be about maybe another 20 minutes after we stop talking. I was at LA Podfest and had the opportunity to talk to a very dear friend, Marc Hershon, and I tracked him down at LA Podfest. Saw he was there and wanted to talk to him about a very specific thing related to film and independent film. And I think you'll enjoy our conversation. You'll understand why I sought him out when you start listening to that. But for the time being, I think it's time for us to get out of here.
Let's get out of here.
All right, let's get out of here. But keep listening to Marc Hershon and our conversation at LA Podfest because it's great. But we have to get out of here for now. Okay, bye.
Chris Gloor joining us at the podcast lab of the 6th annual Los Angeles Podcast Festival. Welcome back.
Yes,
I'm Succotash.
I'm here with Marc Hershon at the
Podfest.
At Podfest. So, but I'm here because just some things that have bothered me that I think that you could help.
Okay.
With some independent filmmakers.
Okay.
So, a really good indie movie recently came out that we reviewed on filmthreat.com called This Is Us. Okay. And it is a brilliant indie romance that has sort of a fantasy element that my co-host from Film Threat, Anthony Ray Bench, reviewed it on the site, gave it a rave review. Here's the issue, and this is why I want to talk to you, is there's a TV show already called This Is Us.
There is
and
indeed.
This is a movie called This Is Us. And additionally, down the pike will be these movies that come out that we review. We try to keep the focus indie movie and movies playing in theaters that I know that I have a personal interest in. I know our audience would. Naming is so important.
Yeah.
What's in a name? So I'm asking you, what's in a name of a movie? And you famously helped me. You've helped me in a bunch of different ways, but you helped name a side business I had called So Me Unlimited.
That's right.
So Me Unlimited, which you can follow the Twitter, which is when I did social media work for a while, like that, you named the company. I couldn't come up with a name for my company. You are known for naming.
That's true.
I mean, that's been your business.
That's what I do,
so
yeah.
I want to ask you, how do you do that? And what are the things that people should know? I mean, the obvious thing, you should just, when you come up with a name, you should Google the name. It should be an original name, right?
That is a big help.
It's a big help,
From two reasons. One is to eliminate confusion.
Right.
A friend of mine runs a live show in San Francisco called Speechless, which is a live PowerPoint comedy presentation show. And then now they're interested in trying to do it for television, but ABC has a show called Speechless. Right, which is a sitcom.
And technically speaking, you can't own a name.
That
you can own
correct.
a trademark, but you can't own a name per se.
You can't own a title.
Right.
You can copyright your work, but you cannot own the actual title, right? Which is why there's I think 3 or 4 songs called In the Mood.
Right.
So you can't get the title. So you're right. You want to eliminate the confusion, and you want something that's original, so you can own it in a sense. If you're the first one out of the box with that original title, you can stand a good chance to make sure that even if something comes out down the pike that has the same name, people are going to think of your thing first, as opposed to the new thing,
Right.
because you've established a stake in the ground.
Like if I did a movie called Star Wars now, it would probably not. I'd probably be in trouble. But I mean, this also applies. Now that I think about it, it really applies not just to namings of movies. I think there's a specialty there in the sense that the success of so many small indie films is due to the digital market, where you're encouraged to add the letter A to the beginning. I worked on this movie called At Middleton with Andy Garcia and Vera Farmiga, and it's a really sweet romance, but the name of the movie was Middleton, and they changed the name of the movie to At Middleton, which is a college in the film.
Okay.
But because they named it it was top in the, because people are lazy, they're like, ugh. You know, does anyone watch movies past the letter S?
It's like it's like the old phone book listings, you know.
Yeah,
you had like quadruple A auto parts.
But this is useful. Yeah, this is useful information not just for namings of movies. I'm sure there's different, subtleties within each, but also namings of podcasts.
Yeah.
What's in a name? I don't know how much you want to brag about yourself and your work in this arena, but you work professionally naming things.
That's right. Yeah.
So could you brag about yourself? Is what I'm asking. I'm trying to prompt you to brag about yourself.
I work for a large branding firm now. I work for a smaller branding firm for a long time, and doing that work, I've named things like the Blackberry, the original Blackberry.
Now, what's the Blackberry? I'm kidding. I know what the... Yes, Blackberry.
There are probably kids being born now that will not have an idea what the Blackberry was.
Right.
Swiffer for Procter & Gamble.
Really?
Yes.
I purchased Swiffers.
Dasani
The Swiffer Duster.
Dasani mineral water.
I'm drinking. There's one in my bag right now.
There you go.
Look how you touched so many lives,
Exactly.
mine included.
Clash of Clans, the tablet game. I named that for Supercell in Finland. On and on. Crackle for Sony. I named that.
So, you're famous in this arena. I don't know why you don't brag about it.
My name is not famous, but my names are famous.
Right. Well, tell me about that then. Like, what is the process you go through? I mean, obviously there's a legal vetting. Do you start with a Google search? Just because I feel that this situation really upset me from the standpoint of this movie, This Is Us, is going to get buried by everything. Even when we were trying to look for pictures to post on the Film Threat website, we couldn't find this. We kept seeing the TV show that everywhere. It was impossible, so hard to find it, and it's such a good film. So I think that this is kind of this is something that is really important. Then there's movies where I think the name is so good you never forget it, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's such a good name. And there's movies that there are films in my mind where it's like the name is so good. I'm going to see a movie just based on the name, and I know that helped when my Big Fat Independent Movie was on the festival circuit, and we played about 40 film festivals all over the world. Many people went to see it just because the name stood out in the program guide, because so many indie filmmakers, the names, they want to go with something earnest and sentimental, and kind of, to me, that's just, it's milquetoast. You gotta
Well, it's the name of anything, whether it's a product, a service, a movie, is the core of your brand. So it needs to stand for what you want the brand to be about. Even if the name may not be understandable at the beginning. I was joking earlier with somebody, as a branding expert, I wasn't really smart naming my show Succotash. But to me, it is what the brand is, because I play clips of other people's shows. So it's this succotash of podcasting, right? So people can't spell it, people don't know what succotash is, but I don't care. To me, it's a brand. And if my show ever really got popular, it would make a lot of sense to the right people, right? But I ran into the exact same problem that This Is Us people are doing. I had several movies on the Hallmark Channel, and one of them was called Wedding Days, starring John Larroquette. And a year later, a feature film came out called Wedding Days, even spelled D-A-Z-E like I had on the Hallmark thing. Fortunately, mine came out first. But now if you try to look up Wedding Days online, all you see is that feature film. And mine's gone. But I was there first, so I feel like, well, there's nothing I can do, because it's not like I had a chance to correct it at that point. The This Is Us movie. Now I don't know how much release or how much distribution it's had, but if it hasn't been widely released, they can change the name.
When do you decide to change the name of something in the process, knowing something else is on the horizon, or do you do like what some have done? Especially this applies more to apps more than anything else. Is an app has a name that doesn't, that name didn't exist before, and it's a made-up name, which is what they've had to do, or a clever respelling or a combination of words. I'm a big fan of portmanteau.
Sure.
At some point, I want to make a portmanteau bag. I'm sure someone has done that.
I love
portmanteau, so that has served me with some things. But what do people do then?
Well, it's interesting.
Cases?
I had a friend of mine who did do an independent movie, and they were calling it Casual Encounters. It was based on sort of casual encounters, like on Craigslist. Mm-hmm. But there was already something out there called Casual Encounters, and they were starting to hit the art festivals, right? The movie festivals. Mm-hmm. And he said, "What can we do?" And we came up with a new name, but in parentheses it said formerly close or Casual Encounters, because it had gotten enough attention that they wanted to make sure that people that already had seen the movie or knew about it knew that the title had changed.
Right.
So those are that's just one kind of thing to think about. It really depends how much distribution the film's gotten. Once it's really out there, it's kind of hard to correct anything unless you do a whole re-release.
Well, there was a movie that I know about from film history that was originally titled Revenge of the Jedi, and then when it came out, they changed it to Return of the Jedi, and Lucas at the time had said that, Jedi don't really get revenge, it's kind of against the Jedi code, so it's Return, we change it. But the rumor was that he changed it because he didn't want bootleggers. There were people bootlegging. As soon as the title was announced, there was bootleg merchandise from Revenge of the Jedi, and a way to, dissuade that bootleg merchandise, because, you can find in the interview where George Lucas says that he's basically a toy maker. Yes. That he's making toys.
Yeah.
That he changed it to Return of the Jedi because to, throw them off course. But so that's one of the rare cases where
I also heard that he flooded the market with Revenge of the Jedi shit. So the stuff that had gotten out early on was no longer worth anything, because there were so many copies of posters that he threw out there that it suddenly diluted the marketplace.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
I know too much about Star Wars. But now back to this naming thing. Is there advice that you can give to indie filmmakers, and advice you can give to me of okay, we're trying to name something. And I'm usually good at, because I've had friends, I've named friends books, I've named friends, I don't do this professionally, this is just, friend will say, I've got, and then, I'll name that. I've come up with names for columns in Film Thread, and just for all various projects, I've come up with names, podcasts, whatnot. I even had a name that was a column in Film Thread in the 90s called Never Coming to a Theater Near You, which ended up, Kenneth Turan actually ended up using it as the title of his book, and I was like, dude, and I called him, and I said, hey, that was, a title of a column in Film Thread. He said, well, it's already done, and the publisher likes it, and that's it, and whatever. And he was right. Whatever. It was a column, and I'm not so precious about names anymore.
Yeah.
I really don't whatever.
Yeah.
But what can you give? What sort of kernel of knowledge? Because I think this is important when you're a filmmaker. There's so much that can go wrong.
Yes.
And
very little you have control of.
Right.
But the title is something you have control of.
You have control of the title. So is it about not being so precious with the name and being willing to pivot?
Yes. Number one, don't get married to anything.
Right.
Number two, we as filmmakers and film writers, we have access to one of the best databases in the world, IMDb.
Right.
And if you have an idea for a title, just stick it in there and see how many times it's already been used, which is probably 4 or 5 times. As a short, as a feature, as a TV show, you'll see it all. It's right there, and you just go, you know what, I'm going to change it, rather than go, well, what if we add an E, or what if, well, no, that's not going to matter, because word of mouth is word of mouth, it's not word of spelling.
Right.
Right? So if you add an E to the thing and it doesn't change the pronunciation, that's not going to help the movie in terms of being a unique title. So you really want to go for uniqueness, and people get married to these things early on. I often will have a title for a movie before I've written the script.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because, well, I'll think of the idea and I go, oh, it'd be a great title for this. But then when I get done with the script, I go, oh, that's a shitty title. But it was like my stake in the ground for my mind to say this is what the movie is around, right? And you just have to know, even when we present names to clients in the branding business, we don't say, here's your name, right? We generate literally, like I'm working on a project right now, we've generated 1,300 names. We will select 200 of those to put into preliminary legal clearance. So that's a lawyer who looks at those things, sees what else is out there that's close, and from that we may get 70 usable names back. And then we look at those and go, okay, which of these are really defining the brand or really supporting what the brand is trying to say? And we'll winnow that down to a list of maybe 35 names.
Wow.
And then we'll say, which of these do we really like that we think they can do something with? Lend themselves to a design, they're easy for people to remember, they're easy to pronounce, they're decidedly different from anything that's directly in the marketplace. And that'll give us maybe 20 to 25 names, right? And so we'll show the client 20 featured names, and then we'll show them a backup list of 15 more additional names that we didn't think were as strong, but it's not our industry. Maybe you guys will see more value in these names. And then we say, now you have to do final legal clearance. We've done preliminary, which is good, but it's about 50% of the way there.
Right.
So then it's like, now your counsel has to take, first of all, pick 8 to 10 of these names we've just shown you. Give those to your counsel, and if you're lucky, if you're really lucky, 3 to 5 of those names will come back that you can use, and then you decide with your heart which of those names is the name for your thing.
I don't think you get paid enough to do this.
It's incredibly hard. People have no idea.
Well, this is why I thought it was so fortuitous running into you here, because, and this situation was fresh in my mind where I thought, well, this filmmaker is going to get boned by having a name that's close to a well-known TV show. It's
Absolutely.
sort of disheartening.
Yeah.
So I just think that's important. It's something that because there's so many names, like a name is something, like I'll remember a name. You want people to be able to remember a name so they can repeat the name to someone else. Say, I saw X movie at a film festival where I saw 40 films, but this is the one movie that stood out to me, and you want to let people know that. Or in there's so much content now that like for something to stand out is difficult, right? Like,
well, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like, I really like that movie, and the title's almost unimportant. It's, let's take Star Wars for instance. Okay,
Yeah.
it's developed this whole culture around it, right? And then, Star Wars, yeah, it's this classic thing. But think about it like a friend. Like if somebody walked in the room and said, "Hey, there's Chris Gloor," and I looked over and it wasn't a guy with your hairstyle and bleached hair and the look that you have, I go, "That's not Chris Gloor." No, his name is Chris Gloor. I go, "But it's not Chris Gloor."
Right. Well, if you look up Chris Gore on iTunes, there's a preacher that is named Chris Gore. It's very successful. And so that's
but you know what
ministries.
But you know what his name isn't?
What?
That Chris Gloor.
That's right. That's why I did that.
I know.
When I signed up for MySpace, this is so many years ago, someone named Chris Gore already had that vanity name, and I was like, dang it. So I just said that, Chris Gore.
Right.
I mean it in a derisive way, but then that just became, through any social network, I would grab that name.
And that became your brand.
That became,
yeah.
So but I wasn't trying to do a brand.
No.
Just to be clear, like there's so much talk of branding, that in terms of people's careers, but I think that gets kind of annoying to me. Like I didn't try to have a brand. I just tried to not.
The best brands.
People not be confused.
But the best brands at their heart are organic. They're the kind of brands that when you look at the thing or you use the product, you go, this couldn't have been called anything else.
Right.
Like when I tell people the Blackberry story, as it truly happened, not the way the...
Can you talk about that now?
Nah, I prefer not to.
Okay.
Sometimes get in
trouble. Well, wait,
trouble.
if you want to, you'll hear it at some point on the Succotash podcast. At some point, you're going to do it.
Yeah, I have
subscribe
before.
to Succotash.
Yeah, I have before in the past.
Yeah.
But when the names were presented to the CEO in Waterloo, Canada, where Research in Motion was, there were a dozen names that we showed them. But Blackberry had already become so ingrained for various reasons in the mind of the executives of that company, even I couldn't tell you what those other 11 names were. because that thing couldn't have been called. I'm talking about the original BlackBerry, not the phone. This was the original device, right?
Which was like a PDA, right?
It was like a little. It looked like a little pager.
Yes.
And that's where the Genesis came from, because the marketing director passed out these prototypes of the device. The one I happened to have was this black plastic pager, but they'd industrial designed these little tiny rounded black plastic keys on it. I go, it looks like a high-tech version of a BlackBerry. That was the genesis of it.
Oh my God.
It was just a casual observation. It wasn't, you should call this thing a BlackBerry.
Wow.
But the weird leap was, the guy from Waterloo, Canada, who was the marketing director, says, that's such a cool idea. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, there's no such thing in nature as a BlackBerry, so it sounds high-tech. And we said, but there is a BlackBerry. But because he was from this little town in Canada, outside Toronto, he literally had never heard the word BlackBerry.
Wow.
They don't have them there.
Wow.
They have something called a Loganberry, which is very close.
Right.
And so we literally showed him a picture. This is a BlackBerry. He goes, I still like that name. And the CEO was also from Waterloo, Canada. So when it came time to pull the trigger, they all thought, what a great name.
Wow. Well, first, I don't think you can emphasize enough how important this is. It's literally making your project stand out. And then also, there are things with Star Wars that has annoyed me a little bit, because I feel the name Star Wars is so big that they don't even care about the name of because there's so many Star Wars things. There's TV shows and video games and this. It's Star Wars and then the subhead of whatever it is, The Last Jedi. Although technically, The Last Jedi was a comic book from a while ago. You could just look it up, The Last Jedi, and there's a comic book with that title on the cover. So that comic writer didn't realize that far in the future that would actually be the name of episode. I always liked when they went with episode 8 or whatever, episode 9, whatever they're.
Yeah, because then it was a story.
Yes, and The Empire Strikes Back was, to me, that is the best Star Wars title, and the famous story behind that was Gary Kurtz was doing an interview, and he was asked about what the name of the next Star Wars movie is, and he said, well, they'd kind of be like chapters like out of a serial, those old serials that played at movie theaters. Maybe it would be called something like The Empire Strikes Back, and that just then became the title, but he randomly said it in an interview during the development of what was called then Star Wars 2.
Oh my God.
Which became Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back.
Hilarious.
And there we are. I bring everything back to Star Wars, and I was trying to talk about indie film and help indie filmmakers and whatnot, but it's such a pleasure to run into you here at the festival. Yeah, exactly. And I just love that. So I would just say to the Film Threat listeners listening to this, subscribe to Succotash, check it out. Marc Hershon is not just working in the branding firm and whatnot, and not just doing the podcast. You're also a screenwriter that has had films produced, not just you're working on your screenplay. So the diversity of your career and just everything you've done, it's just always awesome to talk to you.
I just model myself after you, Chris.
Well, I got too much going on. I'm just trying to do one thing well, and one day I'll do that. Marc, thanks for talking to me.
Great to see you. Absolutely.
Great to see you.